Welcome back everyone, it's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel What If Season 3 Episode 7 video. They finally did the thing, Marvel finally did the thing. Was not expecting them to bring back so much Kang stuff after firing Jonathan Majors, but we'll break it all down. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on here, and they're sort of setting up the sequel series to What If, because What If has essentially been canceled. After the finale tomorrow, this will be the end of the What If show, but they're essentially setting up an Exiles TV show. They literally call them the Exiles in this episode, because I think in several years when they bring the show back, it'll just be an Exiles show. There were a lot of you early on when they started doing What If, they were like, you know what, they should actually do an Exile show. This feels like an Exile show. And turns out that's probably the idea that they came up with while they were in the middle of making the show. We should just do it as Exiles. I'll explain the differences between what they did during the What If series and the Exiles in the comics, because they're two completely different concepts in the comics. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. I know everybody now is like, wait a minute, they brought all this Kang stuff back. What does this mean about them bringing Kang back during Avengers 5 and Avengers 6? We'll address that during the video, but you have to remember that a lot of the stuff they do on the animated What If series is also its own separate thing from the live action stuff. One of their core operating principles with this is that they can do the crazy stuff without worrying about stepping on the toes of the live action stuff, although it sounds like they had some problems with that behind the scenes because there were a couple really big ideas that Marvel blocked that they also reference in this episode with all the X-Men and other Fantastic Four characters that show up. I know there are going to be a ton of questions about those foosball characters because they wouldn't exist if those characters had not been two realities where those characters existed. And just a couple days ago, one of the What If producers claimed that they didn't realize they could use X-Men Fantastic Four characters in bigger ways when they were actually making this episode a couple years ago. There's been a lot of confusion about that, but I think that's the reason why they're just foosball versions of the characters instead of characters that are actually on the Exiles team. Why don't you put the actual Phoenix on the Exiles team? That's probably why the Birdie character exists in the first place, because they wanted to use the Phoenix, but they didn't think that they could. You even look at some of her powers and they look very Phoenix-like, especially with the whole bird theme of it all. But the actual episode title was What If the Watcher Disappeared, a reference to the Watcher being arrested by the other Watchers essentially from his race because he broke their highest law to not interfere in the affairs of the rest of the multiverse no matter what. But like I said, really the episode is more importantly a setup for the Exiles team from the comics. The major difference here is that what they've done the past couple seasons on What If with a more serialized story, the characters working together from different universes, is literally the whole concept of the Exiles comics. Within the traditional What If comics, all those issues were meant to be single, one-off episodes, comic to comic, so it wasn't meant to be a serialized story. But when they started making the TV show, they tried to introduce a more serialized element, but it just doesn't really work quite as well. It wound up being more of an Exile show, so it makes sense that they cancel this, and then just moving forward, they'll do more of a serialized format with a team that they just cycle the roster of from different realities, visiting other crazier realities, dealing with multiverse threats, and they just call it the Exile show. They didn't say when that show is going to premiere. I'm assuming the next several years. I guess it's probably going to be a good long while before we see it, but it sounds like they are developing it behind the scenes. The way they explain it on this show too, a couple characters from Season 1 like T'Challa Star-Lord, Black Widow, you have a version of Thor here, Gamora from Season 1, but because they're not here with them in the team in this episode, I think the idea is they died at some point before this episode picks up. They use the same Marvel Animation intro logo, but with new music to cue them going up to the reality and fighting this Cthulhu monster from Season 1, Episode 1, which Captain Carter says had a grudge against him for a while because it goes back to the very first episode of the series. We see it coming through one of the jump points about to destroy this version of Xandar. Nova Prime in this universe is the version of Nebula that joined the Nova Corps during Season 2, so it's a reference to that version of Nebula in that team. But Nova Prime in the MCU is meant to be Glenn Close's character from Guardians of the Galaxy, and for those of you asking, they are working on a live-action Nova series that will happen after Secret Wars with Richard Rider's character. He'll be the main character of that series. It's meant to be a space-based series, so I don't think they're going to do Sam Alexander on that, which I think most people were wondering about. Richard Rider or Sam Alexander? It sounds like they're starting with Richard Rider, which I think is the right way to go for them. In this universe, Groot and Korg are also part of this Nova Corps. Captain Carter shows up with a really big Kang Easter egg in one of his time ships from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. A lot of you asking, didn't they just change the entire plot of Avengers 5 from Kang Dynasty to Doomsday with Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom, basically using him to replace the Council of Kangs? Yes, that is all true, but I think what happened here, this is sort of like a funny detail about the way the animation is made versus live action stuff, is that Marvel actually fired Jonathan Majors after they had already been working on this episode. So all this Kang-related storyline stuff in this episode and in the finale were happening way before Jonathan Majors got into trouble. Maybe they'll answer some questions about that. Usually when it comes to more dramatic stuff like that behind the scenes, they tend to not answer questions though, but that's probably what went on. But the whole idea here, though, is that on their multiverse base, like their multiverse ship, they have multiple versions of Kang's time chair from different realities. So like in different realities, they fought many versions of Kang and just taken his technology. So if it wasn't clear, even though she shows up in this one time ship, and they made it seem like a really big deal during Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, they have like 10 of these on their spaceship. It seems like they've been fighting for a number of years together because they work across time and space. The way their timeline works is just a little bit more wonky, so it's not a linear thing since the end of Season 2. But this is basically what happened to Captain Carter after the end of Season 2. She just joined the Exiles team. They put together a larger team, and has just been facing multiverse threats since then. She calls this Xandar 625 because it's meant to be universe number 625. When she mentions finding the champion, the beast's name is the champion of Hydra. But the way she explains it, we need to stop this before it consumes all realities everywhere, and it's just in the middle of consuming this particular reality. And because we're talking about the whole concept of a multiverse Avengers like an Exiles team, they'll be doing a version of that during Avengers Secret Wars where they put together a multiverse Avengers team to defeat Robert Downey Jr.'s live-action God Emperor Doom character. So even though the episode is more leaning into Exiles stuff in the future on the animation side of things, they're also teasing some concepts that they'll pay off in live action too in different ways. The other Easter egg here too, a lot of longtime comic book readers will probably remember, the champion is an actual Marvel character, and because we're on Xandar where the Power Stone was in the MCU, Thanos had to defeat them to actually get it at the beginning of Avengers Infinity War. He actually did the same thing with the champion character in Marvel Comics during the original comic book version of the Infinity Gauntlet saga. He had to defeat the champion to take the Power Stone. So it's like the circle of Easter eggs is now complete with the Power Stone here. There are a lot of turns of phrase and references that sort of call back to previous seasons on the show, like recap in really quick fashion during all these conversations that people were having at the beginning of the episode. Like when she tells Nebula, this might all seem strange to reference all the Doctor Strange plot from Season 1 and Season 2, with him turning into the villain by the end of Season 2. The rest of her Exiles team shows up in their new multiverse ship they're using as their base. The flying character here, like I've said before, is the adult version of Howard the Duck in Darcy's child, Birdie. She's being played by Natasha Lyonne, who's also like a completely different character in the Fantastic Four movie that we'll see next year too. She's not meant to be a character from the comics. They're mostly using her as sort of like a Shuri tech genius kind of character, but also I think the reason for her character existing, like the whole reason they created her, is because they wanted to use the Phoenix, but they couldn't do it. She's calling herself Birdie the Duck because Duck is her last name, like it's her full name, Birdie the Duck. Her father is Howard the Duck. Darcy even refers to herself now as the Duck is her last name. Kahori portals in from Season 2. That's part of her special powers she got from the Tesseract, the Space Stone. We will probably see her in live action, but not the Birdie character. Then Storm comes in wielding Thor's hammer based on the many versions of Storm in the comics who wielded hammers. She had a couple different hammers in the comics. Her most notable one was called Stormcaster and was created by Loki, of all people, not by Thor. She even fought Frog Thor in a What If comic book storyline. We literally just saw a cameo with Frog Thor fighting Alligator Loki last week. When she enters, they play a riff from the X-Men 97 theme music because she's meant to be a version of that Storm from another reality where she got the powers of Thor. And it's the same actress from X-Men 97 playing the character. They even give her a lot of speeches during the episode like Storm has during X-Men 97 and X-Men the Animated Series. She's calling herself Storm, Goddess of Thunder, Mistress of the Cosmic Elements. They help Captain Carter kill the monster by flying through its brain, eye to eye, because that's the only weak part of its body, with the shards from the Watcher's multiverse base from last week's episode falling to the ground and then realizing something has happened to him. They call it the observational plane because it exists in a pocket dimension on a higher plane of reality in the 5th dimension. That's also meant to be where the Watcher's homeworld exists inside the MCU. It's a little bit different in the comics. In the MCU, they're saying that the Watchers are multiversal beings, meaning one race of Watchers for the entire multiverse, but in the comics, there are different Watchers in each universe, and each Watcher only watches one universe. So Uatu, the main Watcher of this series, also the main Watcher of the Marvel Comics, only watches the 616 comic book universe. So the whole twist of the episode is they need to find a way to travel from the third dimension all the way to the fifth dimension, which they can't do with the level of technology they have. It's not like they can literally just fly there in a regular spaceship. Then they change the standard What If intro, and it's the Eminence character, Jason Isaacs' character, doing the voiceover, but it's a darker twist on that. They bleed most of the color out, and the reason why it only looks blue is because that's the color of the Eminence's screen where he observes all the Watchers. The whole joke here being that he watches the Watchers, like who watches the Watchmen. All to ensure that the other Watchers out there do not interfere in a twist of the wording of the normal Watchers intro. Then they played the Eminence's version of Captain Carter's backstory, using it as an example of how the Watcher messed things up by interfering. These are all the events at the end of Season 2 as well, too. Notice their base looks more like a true multiverse base existing on a higher dimension because this is meant to be the fifth dimension. Then they literally refer to the Multiverse Avengers team as the Exiles, setting up that sequel TV series, and basically call an all-out war on them if they're going to try and reach their homeworld in the fifth dimension or mess with the multiverse. So basically, it's open season on all the lower-level beings. So they're basically setting up the Watchers as the main villain of the actual entire series itself. Like heading into the finale, they will be the main threat to stop. My assumption is they'll be way too powerful for them to actually stop, so it'll be more of a talk no jutsu situation where they just come to an agreement and the Watchers chill out and agree not to wipe all them. Back on their multiverse ship, they play a very, very Easter egg heavy game of foosball with the characters from across all of Marvel Comics, like all the biggest ones, including MCU characters, new X-Men, Fantastic Four characters. So just going around the horn here, like looking at all the different characters, there's Thanos, Loki, this is Proxima Midnight behind him, there's Doctor Doom over on the left, the X-Men version of Quicksilver in front of him, then Birdie makes a Thanos Infinity Gauntlet snap joke, then there's Iron Fist and Luke Cage in comic book accurate costumes. Pretty much everybody on the board here has comic book accurate costumes. There's Baron Zemo next to Black Panther, Mystique, Ultron, but it's the Infinity version of Ultron, Magneto behind them, Captain America, the goalie on the other side is Galactus. There's a Loki here next to Doctor Doom. There's a Gamora, Black Panther, Sue Storm from the Fantastic Four, Scarlet Witch, Wolverine is meant to be from X-Men 97, not the Hugh Jackman version of Wolverine. Then there's a comic book accurate version of Kang behind him. This is Iron Man, there's a Rogue next to him, Beta Ray Bill of all people, everyone asking when they're going to do Beta Ray Bill. The What If producers said that they actually tried to do a bigger Beta Ray Bill episode, but Marvel blocked them because they plan on doing live-action Beta Ray Bill at some point. So the big takeaway here is why would the What If producers say they weren't allowed to use X-Men or Fantastic Four characters or even Kang here, but they have them here on the board, like they have Doctor Doom here on the board when Robert Downey Jr. is about to show up as Doctor Doom in live action. My assumption is that Marvel and Kevin Feige turned them down for larger roles in episodes, like actual characters running around doing stuff in the plot, and they're only letting them reference the characters as part of this foosball game. So you can use them as a background Easter egg, but they can't be really big characters kind of situation. When it comes to Storm though, because she is a really big character during this, my assumption is they actually bargained to use her as a bigger character, but they didn't let them use the wider cast of X-Men characters. I think the idea is they were developing this separately while they were developing X-Men 97 Season 1, so there's some weird behind-the-scenes goings-on. Hopefully in several years when they bring the show back as an Exiles show, they'll have worked all that stuff out. They basically used the shard of the fifth dimension to upgrade the multiverse engine in Kang's ship to travel to the fifth dimension and test this out, but they are unsuccessful. And like I said, the way they're positioning the Birdie character, she's also meant to be their Shuri tech genius type character. Some of the symbols here are celestial symbols mixed with symbols that appeared on Kang's time ship in Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, because the idea is that Kang comes from the 30th century, so by that time he's been able to incorporate celestial technology into his time travel ship. They use her custom digital meter with a whole bunch of jokes here like Loserville, Lame City, Now We're Talking, Rad Sauce, Straight Fire, and money is the 100% success point with the Howard the Duck symbol. The whole idea being they need to achieve enough energy to actually cross the dimensional barrier. They try to use Storm's powers of Thor to see if that will help. She explains that she's also weaving a spell during this, so this version of Storm also knows how to use magic. which also does not work, and then they get the idea to use an Infinity Ultron from a reality where he didn't try to wipe the entire multiverse, like a version who wound up turning good ultimately. All because Infinity Ultron was the only being in existence they know that was ever able to cross that dimensional barrier. They basically explained that they're looking for a version of Infinity Ultron that never wound up hearing the Watcher's call, so never tried to cross the dimensional barrier, and just wound up sitting in the universe that he completely wiped till the end of time because he's functionally immortal. They revealed they stole some reset charges from the TVA. Those are the devices they use to wipe alternate timelines when they want to get rid of them. So they say if things go badly in this Infinity Ultron's reality, they'll just completely prune it. Then they show the backstory of this new Infinity Ultron from the alternate universe they're using in the episode. He destroys his entire universe. There's a bunch of cameo scenes, basically a replay of what we saw from Infinity Ultron during Season 1. But this version just continues to chill out forever, the only being left in existence till the end of time, till the heat death of his universe. When Captain Carter shows up in another one of Kang's time ships, like I said, they have like 10 of these on their ship, he says that he's been sitting here for thousands of years. Then the way they explain it, one of the other Watchers came to attack Captain Carter, sensing that she would actually be trying successfully to cross the dimensional barrier, so they're basically arresting her before she can actually try. Back on their ship, Birdie does a multiverse Zoom call with Darcy and Howard the Duck, who look like they've gotten way older at this point. There's been a big time jump for them. There's a joke about donuts in a universe where carbs make you lose weight instead of gain it. I would also like to have some of those donuts. Then they go after Captain Carter and find Infinity Ultron. They obviously mistakenly look at the broken shield thinking that he had something to do with it, but he explains that he has had a change of heart, like he's got a 180 on destroying all of reality and now wants to help them save it. Winds up absorbing the power from the shard of the fifth dimension, basically upgrading himself to even greater cosmic heights. Like he's already a cosmic being with the 6 Infinity Stones, but now he's an even greater god tier of Ultron, and he can see all of reality the same way that the Watcher does, like a 5th dimension look at all of existence across all of time, all at the same time. Currently making him the most OP character in all of the MCU ever. I would say the beings most closest to him in terms of power level that they've already canonized to the MCU would be like the Cosmic Entity Death, the Living Tribunal, and maybe Eternity, but not quite, because Eternity is really only the sum total of existence of a single universe. So there's like a different version of Eternity in every single universe. Whereas now this Ultron exists on a higher dimension. And because of that, they're basically explaining he has the same power levels as the Watchers. The Watchers also now one of the most powerful groups in all of the MCU. He then uses his upgraded cosmic power to transport them to the 5th dimension in Kang's time chair. Also love his little sly joke here as he's doing it, like he has a sense of humor even though he's so powerful. What's bigger than 100%? Infinity, because he is the Infinity Ultron, and he truly is infinite now. Like he can see all of existence across all of time and every reality all at the same time. Like the true concept of infinity. We talk about characters trying to turn themselves into gods in the MCU, but he is like the character that's gotten the closest to actually doing something like that. The only limitation that he has, though, is that he can't see the future beyond their battle with the Watchers in the 5th dimension, but neither can the Watchers. So basically they're setting up a finale battle between the Exiles and the Watchers, like they're the big threat. But like I said, they probably won't actually be able to physically stop them. They'll let the Talk No Jutsu get them to chill and agree not to wipe them all. Also setting up an eventual sequel series that's just based around the whole concept of the Exiles, like they'll just do an Exiles TV show. But there was a whole bunch of stuff going on in the episode. I feel like it's the true fulfillment of the promise that they gave at the beginning of What If. Like, as crazy as you could possibly imagine, all these different realities, any possibility, that's what the show should be. So overall, it does seem like they will at least end the show with a big banger. If there are any other Easter eggs or references that you spotted in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. Click here for my finale video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my other What If episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.